Welcome back to the Friday Show, presented by the Pennsylvania Horse Breeders Association. Their 10th annual Stallion auction is coming up next week. We'll tell you more about it in just a few minutes. I'm Scott Jagow along with Ray Paulick. Ray, this is the 20th anniversary that the NTRA is doing a Moment of the Year. It started back in 1999, and the winner that year was Chris Antley and Charismatic in the Belmont Stakes and that touching moment there. Since then, looking back, it's kind of fun to go back and see all the different moments of the year for the past 20. You know, you have Tis Now for America and Zenyatta, and there's so many. American Pharaoh, of course, winning the Triple Crown, breaking the drought. Anyway, so this year we have a slate of 14 different choices, and we're going to talk about some of those as we look back on 2019. Let's start with what I think is an obvious choice for Moment of the Year. That's got to be the disqualification of Maximum Security in the Derby.
Yeah, voting is still open for another week, but I declare this race officially over. It's a you got it for Maximum Security and the stewards who disqualified him and put up Country House. It's a race that people have been talking about since the first Saturday in May. They'll be talking about it this year, next year. It'll be talked about for a long time because this was the first time that the stewards took down a horse for interference in the Kentucky Derby, and it was controversial. There's no question about it.
It was a surreal television moment for 20 minutes afterwards where they were showing the stewards, watching the replays. You had the connections being nervous down on the racetrack. Of course, we had rain all day, so it was muddy. It was just a bizarre sequence. And at first, my reaction was, well, they're going to look at it and they're not going to overturn it, because it's the Derby and they don't do that. But then as time went on, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, are they actually going to do this? And, in the end, when I looked back on it, and I was on a TV show a couple days later giving my thoughts on it. And, after I looked back, I said, yes, this was a good decision that they made because it was a foul and it was an egregious foul and it could have caused a huge problem. We'd be talking about whether the sport existed the next day. So, yeah, it's got to be the moment of the year.
Well, and it's a teachable moment for a lot of people because, as we know, a lot of people tune in to watch one race a year, and that's the Kentucky Derby. And I'm sure there were many of the people who were tuned in to NBC who didn't actually know there were three stewards sitting up above the grandstand watching the replays and making sure the race was run cleanly, that everybody had a fair shot. And it was educational for a lot of people, I'm sure, who thought that whoever crosses the wire first gets the win.
Yeah, who knew there were rules in horse racing? Well, a couple weeks later, we had another teachable moment. It was kind of a bizarre, surreal moment as well when Bodie Express dumped his jockey at the beginning of the race, but then he stayed with the pack and ran all the way around like he was in the race. And afterwards, there were a lot of people on social media asking questions. I had people texting me, does that happen often? If he had won, would he have won the race? Would it have counted? So it was another moment where we could explain that, no, you have to have a jockey on, but it blew up on social media.
Yeah, it did. And thankfully, nobody was injured as a result. And it proved how invaluable and how talented some of these outriders are. The fact that Bodie Express was pulled up, before anything bad can happen. But a lot of people, you've seen it happen at the track. A lot of people see it, and sometimes the horse will actually win the race, which to me goes to show you what their competitive spirit is all about.
Yeah. Well, let's move on and talk about some other races this year that were contentious. They're separated out into different moments, but I'm going to lump some of them together because there were a couple of filly mare races that were really close, like the Personal Ensign between Midnight Bassoux and Elate went right down to the wire, and Midnight Bassoux won by a nose. And then you also had the Test where Covfefe put in an amazing performance, and they were stride for stride down the stretch in the Test, and that was against Serengeti Empress. Covfefe finally prevailed there. And then the Met Mile, which going in, everyone was saying this might be one of the best Met Miles ever.
Yeah, those two filly races you mentioned were just as good as it gets, and the Met Mile will probably be remembered by a lot of people, as much for the horse that didn't win it, McKenzie, who had a lot of trouble in the stretch, as much as the horse who did win it, Mitole. Both it turned out to be really good horses. Mitole will be a champion at the end of the year. McKenzie has a big year ahead of him. Mitole has already been retired. But those are three really exciting races. The Met Mile is a stallion making race too. That's the one thing about that race, and we'll get a chance to see what Mitole does as a stallion.
And Thunder Snow was in there third in the Met Mile, and he had won the Dubai World Cup for the second time this year. Actually, that's also a moment, hashtag Thunder Snow, I believe. So, it all started early in the year with some of these things. Let's move on and talk about the passing of one of the legendary people in this business, and that is Mary Lou Whitney. She died at the age of 93.
Yeah, this was a moment really for all of racing to just kind of pause and reflect back on all the great things she's done for racing. She won the Eclipse Award of Merit some years ago, but you can't go to Saratoga and not feel the involvement that she had, that her husband John Hendrickson had, and combined the Whitney name is just synonymous with class and with Saratoga and really racing in general. So it was the moment that we lost Mary Lou, it was a chance to really sit back and say, wow, what a tremendous contribution to the sport she made.
Yeah, the sport, the community, the town, so much that she put in over her life. We also lost Randy Romero, Hall of Fame jockey, who had long-standing health issues. And of course, the racing industry misses him as well. All right, let's move on and talk about Arlington Million Day. What a performance by Chad Brown. I mean, this guy, I kind of joke about watching the races at Saratoga, and Chad Brown has the 1-2 finishers. I call it a Chad Zacta. And he's gotten into trifectas too. But this day, he won all 4 of the graded stakes on the Arlington Million card.
Yeah, the one thing you can say is that as amazing as an achievement is, you can't really be that surprised by it because we've really gotten accustomed to him winning all the big grass races. And as you said, sometimes finishing first and second, sometimes finishing first, second, and third. And he puts him in the right spots. Outstanding trainer. You have to have the horses first of all, and he's got them.
Now, he didn't win all the grass races though. In fact, he did not win the 4-Star Dave Handicap because that was won by Got Stormy, who beat Uni, who later won the Breeders' Cup Mile, trained by Chad Brown. But Got Stormy did prevail in that race, the filly, and she was so sharp that day, and that is one of the moments. 4-Star Stormy is the hashtag. Let's go on and talk about the Breeders' Cup Classic, because Vino Rosso going in wasn't the favorite, but as the race crept closer, there seemed to be a lot of buzz about him, and it was a big moment for both Todd Pletcher and Mike Rapoli, who both have had years in this game.
Yeah, the Breeders' Cup was run. The dirt course that day was deep. It was tiring. Not every horse liked it. There were some upsets on the day, but this was a horse that really seemed to really adjust to that course. A big, strong colt, and it was an impressive performance. And he beat a good horse in McKenzie. We talked about him also not winning the Met Mile, but I think that Vino Rosso turned out to be a really accomplished horse who we had high hopes for before the Triple Crown as a 3-year-old, and Todd kept him together. He had a good season this year, and he too has gone to the breeding shed before turning 5.
One other moment I want to mention is Bricks BC, which is Bricks and Mortar winning the Breeders' Cup Turf over United, the long shot. But it was the way he won it coming from behind, and his undefeated season was on the line in that stretch run, and he proved that he is a deserving Horse of the Year likely winner coming up in the Eclipse Awards.
Yeah, I think Bricks and Mortar is probably as big a cinch in the Horse of the Year vote as Maximum Security's Disqualification of the Kentucky Derby is the winner of the Moment of the Year.
Well, we're going to talk about the Eclipse Awards more next week. we have a poll question about one of the categories. Of course, it's the 3-year-old colt category. Who would you have voted for? You know, the voting is closed now for that. But if you had a chance to vote, who would you have put your vote for of the 3 finalists? Maximum Security, Code of Honor, Omaha Beach. PaulickReport.com. Share your thoughts.
Yeah, people have opinions on this one, don't they? They really do.
Oh, it's not going to be a slam dunk, I'm pretty sure, based on some of the votes I've seen from sports writers. You know. All right, so the Stallion season auction is coming up next Thursday through Saturday. It's all online. Pennsylvania Horse Breeders Association. Man, there's a lot of good stallions available for this.
Yeah, there really are. First of all, if you're interested in the auction, you've got to go to thoroughbred.com to register before the auction opens. You can find out more about the stallions. There's more than 75 of them, I believe. PAbred.com to access information. And they're not just Pennsylvania stallions. There are some from Pennsylvania, but also Kentucky, Maryland, New York, and Florida.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Friday Show. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week.